Ask how to get up to an $800 prepaid card. Call today.
Back now to the breaking news. NBC News is exclusively reporting that tomorrow Donald Trump will be interviewed by a New York City probation officer. He's going to do it via Zoom from his home at Mar-a-Lago. He will be accompanied by his attorney, Todd Blanche. The interview comes amid growing concern over Donald Trump's threats of revenge and retribution as he awaits sentencing on his 34 felony hush money conviction. Joining me now, Barbara McQuaid, former federal prosecutor, now law professor at University of Michigan, MSNBC legal analyst. Barbara also wrote the book, Attack from Within, How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. Thank you for joining, my friend. How do you interpret this relatively speedy scheduling of Trump's probation interview, considering his sentencing is not for over a month, not till July 11th?
Well, this is an event that typically occurs quite rapidly after the conviction of a defendant, whether it's by guilty plea or at trial, because this probation meeting is to compile all the information that the judge will use in imposing that sentence. And so the probation department is an arm of the court, and they will collect information about Donald Trump's character, his history, his education, his family life as a child, his work history, all of the good things and bad things that he has done or has happened to him throughout his life. And these will things that the judge will keep in mind when imposing sentence.
Okay, let's build on that and hear now from former New York City Probation and Corrections Commissioner Martin Horn, who explained the purpose of the interview to our colleague Ari Melber. Here it is.
We use a term, we call it, is this individual amenable to supervision? That means is he or she receptive to accepting the restrictions that are placed upon them in the event they are placed on probation. Will they comply with the rules, or are they people who are likely to violate the rules?
I'm curious about that. What kinds of questions will an officer ask Donald Trump to determine if he is likely to violate rules of probation? And Barbara, can he take into account that which he has witnessed for himself, heard for himself, read for himself with reporting about the way Donald Trump typically behaves?
Yes, I think that will rely on objective factors, but I think some of the questions that he'll be asked is, do you understand that you may need to report to me on a regular basis? Do you understand that you will be prohibited from associated with anyone with a criminal record? And so the reactions to those questions will in some way inform what goes into the probation officer's report. But absolutely, certainly, the probation officer and the court will consider the way Donald Trump has acted in court before and the judgments that he has received before. So the defamation judgments against E. Jean Carroll, in that case, the conviction of the Trump Organization in the tax case, the Attorney General's case about fraud in running his business enterprise. All of those things will be factors to determine whether Donald Trump is a good risk for someone who will comply with orders by the court.
Okay, and let's say that the probation officer recommends probation and or a house arrest. How likely is Judge Merchan to follow that recommendation? How much does the probation officer recommendation and report play into what a judge will decide?
You know, the decision about what to do with the information is typically up to the judge, him or herself. The probation officer's job is to gather all of the information that the judge will then use in making that decision. So they might, come up with some sort of recommendation or a score or an assessment, but ultimately it's the judge's decision about whether to go forward. And if someone is not a suitable candidate for probation, then the alternative for the judge is a custodial sentence where the person is detained in prison for some period of time.
So Trump's defense team, the sentencing recommendations, those are due this Thursday. So they won't ask for home confinement or an ankle bracelet, certainly not a prison term. What sentence can they suggest that Donald Trump is not going to find objectionable?
Well, it's hard to imagine, most of the time, the most lenient sentence that a defense attorney seeks is a sentence of probation. It's hard to imagine, though, that Donald Trump himself will agree to some of the terms here. But oftentimes, someone like Donald Trump probably will not have great restrictions on his travel, but he may have restrictions that include not associating with people with criminal convictions. For someone like Donald Trump, who's got people that he has associated with who have criminal convictions, Steve Bannon, for example, Peter Navarro, that could be challenging to him. But if he is not willing to comply with those kinds of conditions, his alternative is prison. And so I suspect that his lawyer will have a strong conversation with him that probation is a pretty good alternative to all of the other options.
Let me ask you quickly about Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who's going to also make some sentencing recommendations. He could face political backlash if he goes for a prison term, or if he doesn't. What weighs heaviest on his mind as a prosecutor in this historic moment?
Yes, I think there are a lot of factors that a prosecutor has to think about in cases like this. I think you can't think about how people might react, whether the public will be angry with you or politically, whether it's difficult. I think he really has to look at the facts here and the law and decide what's appropriate. Of course, there's no real precedent for this, but I think in light of the way that Donald Trump violated the gag order in this case and his continued lack of remorse in this case, would lean heavily in favor of requesting at least some prison time.
We'll see if that happens. Barbara McQuaid, thank you so much. Good to see you as always. Brutal heat in several parts of this country. It is rough even